Good morning, everybody. I would love it for if we were all sitting next to each other around a table, but since we aren't able to, this is the next best thing. So thank you. Welcome. I know school has just got done, so um, yeah, the kiddos are with you. So just thank you for coming out and joining us on this in this virtual space. I'd also like to give a special thank you to Mrs. Guzman and Mrs. Rodriguez for hosting our platform today. We will be recording today's information session to use at other schools and for those unable to attend today. So I like to take a moment to acknowledge some of the issues that is going on. I know the CDD is going on with um, with all Minneapolis public schools right now. The climate of unrest, um, and also leaders for the family and the leaders in the work. As I mentioned a moment ago, one of the STC's School Transformation Collaborative mission is to support parents. One way we do this is by forming parents groups like this one, listening to what is important to them, and creating a space for leadership and development and assisting in determining paths which they can get involved in their schools, and also influence education as thought partners. So collaborating with the school together. And so I'm just going to be going over just the agenda for today. So we will be talking about the purpose of STC. We'll be opening and grounding. We'll be doing introductions from STC team members, school administrations, and participants. And those will be who we are and why we are here. We will talk about the norms to standards to which hold our work, the battlefield, direct and indirect, parent voice, and why parent voice is important, barriers and challenges, traditional versus new parent roles, and our final thoughts. Next steps and any questions. So we will have a Q&A, a small Q&A after. So, and also during the presentation, if you do have any questions, please put them in the chat or comments. We will read them and go from there. Okay. Um, so again, as we stated, the purpose is for STC is to create a collaborative for the parents, to just to collaborate with the parents. The slide isn't changing. There we go. There we go. So it's to create a collaborative with the parents, um, for to understand and encourage the parents that they are like the number one leaders, and they know what's best, and that it is okay that you have that voice. Families and members of school communities have unique insights into the needs and promises of their students, and schools and systems will come to be better understand and benefit from the unique wisdom of their communities. As we stated, parents know best, community members know best. We know how to navigate our communities, our families, and that's what makes it unique, but also that's what makes benefits the schools when collaborating with parents. By organizing parents, we seek to help those who are too often left out of the school level and systems and level decision making and processes and initiative implementation plans to understand the business of schooling. So, to understand the actual system of schooling. And the STC vision is to establish parent leadership groups in every school and support of student educational justice, and to have a different system, one which shifts the power dynamic of systems towards the aspirations and needs for each child and family in school and community empowers new leaders. This is very powerful because some people may say, I don't stand up this way, I don't talk this way. But that's what makes you unique and your family is unique too. And that's what makes the vision of STC. Effective empowerment strategies by mutual and focused on information sharing and capacity building within the school community in ways that embrace local school circumstances and community leadership. So, again, making a collaborative effort, but also being informative about the systems and how they work. And so then I will take it over to the founder and CEO, Miss Tierney Carano.
Thank you, Triasia.
Yes.
Um, so my name is Tierney Carroll. Excuse me. I'm the founder and the CEO of the School Transformation Collaborative. I'm a long-time Northside community member. I'm a mother of three, proud grandmother of 9 young ladies. And in August, we are expecting our 10th grandchild. And my poor husband is just really hoping that this time it'll be a boy. But what brings me into the space today is really threefold. It's my own children's experiences while in school and my personal frustrations navigating 3 children through the public and charter school systems. And unfortunately, 3 generations later, I'm still seeing all the issues that I struggled with continuing to be areas of contention. Another reason is that it is really my desire to see improvements in the learning experience of not just my own grandchildren, but for all children. And then finally, the fact that I've acknowledged that working with parents in support of championing for their leadership within schools is critical to the success of our students. So a little bit about my story, about how my organization, the School Transformation Collaborative, came into existence. Like I mentioned, I had my own issues with the education system, but I always was in support of and advocating for my children. I was that mom that was in the background, screaming my kids' names from the bleachers, embarrassing the life out of them, or helping with dances or chaperoning field trips. But I always wanted to do more. But there never seemed to be an option or an opportunity for me to get involved until one day the school leader came to me and asked me to join the board of directors as the treasurer. And I was so excited that I just jumped on this opportunity to finally get more involved with the school. And it wasn't for until about 6 months into on the board that I realized just how little I knew about the inner workings of school. And if I would have known some of the things that I know now, it would have made advocating for my children so much easier. So seeing firsthand the struggles of the administrative team, the difficult decisions being made by the board, all the reporting requirements, budget decisions, sometimes robbing Peter to pay Paul, and all the fires that they had to put out on a daily basis, it was just exhausting. But one thing it gave me was a newfound respect and appreciation for the school staff and those who volunteered for the board. But what really touched my core was realizing the many decisions that were being made on behalf of students and their families, and yet the parents were never, ever considered or given an opportunity to share their voice on the matters. I realized that with everything that I struggled with when my children were in school, I had now become a part of the very system which I had previously fought against. I was supporting a top-down type approach, where we're giving families what we thought that they needed, and we told them the final decisions of what was going to happen to their families versus supporting a bottoms-up approach, which is what it should be, which would allow parents to be a part of the thought and decision-making process so that they could authentically participate in determining what was best for their children. I even recall having some really deep discussions about the need for equality and for equity. But any decisions were that we made, for the schools and for the families, it was really based off of Minnesota's definition of those words. And as I learned more, I realized that we were looking at equality and equity in the wrong ways. And so that's why I added this slide, because I didn't initially understand why, if we were equally giving to students and supporting them equitably, why weren't our students, why were they continuing to struggle? Well, the reality of many of our families is what is depicted in this third picture. And this reality isn't dependent on our race, income, or our status. Because by Minnesota standards, my family was identified as a two-parent household, middle-class family, 2.5 children, with median to upper income. Yet my experiences with public education made this third box my reality. And you may ask why. Well, it was because one of my very intelligent, outgoing, and highly talented children was diagnosed with ADD. And I take the time to share a piece of this story because I realized our frustrations as parents with schools aren't always due to the parents and the students not getting these boxes right. It's because the schools and their systems aren't always set up to support those who don't fit neatly into their prescribed boxes. And it's not the fault of the educators, it's the system which they work. It was just built that way. So when we think of that first column there of equality, if you're like me, you're thinking of all things being equal, but simply making certain that all students receive the same box really doesn't make their education equal. Especially if they're not starting from the same place or needing the same things. And so for this reason, it's really crucial for educators to address any barriers that students face in succeeding in school. And so something needs to be added, and that's that middle box. That's equity. Equity is offering individualized support to students, which addresses their individual barriers. But it's not even as easy as, as this equity picture reflects either, because this picture really implies that with our own actions, marginalized people can change the systems easily by requesting more boxes. But simply being fair and inclusive, giving students these extra boxes, so to speak, to stand on, giving them access to the same opportunities to learn and develop, that doesn't even ensure that he or she is given the required structural or systematic concepts to be successful. But in pursuit of educational equity, those responsible for ensuring equity have to realize and recognize the historic conditions and barriers that have presented opportunities and success and learnings for students being based on their race, their incomes, and social conditions. So there's something else that's needed, and that's justice, where all the barriers are actually removed and no one person gets way more when another gets less. So all this to say is that the educational reality of marginalized people looks more like this third section. This reflects education doing exactly what it was designed to do. And it really validates or depicts the experiences many of us are having today. So education as it is currently structured, it's working. It's just not necessarily working in favor for our children. So if we want, as parents, our schools to work differently, you'll need to be the ones to change it. And the changes needed for educational justice will require system changes. And it's not just communities of people needing to change. So I task you today to tell each other the truth about your frustrations, to share experiences about education, whether it's good or bad, Have those tough decisions, openly discussing how fair or how far, I'm sorry, we must go to ensure our children receive systematic equity, social justice, racial justice, equity, inclusion, the list can go on. So we invite you to embrace this new way for parents and community members to learn and lead together within your schools. If this year and a half has taught us anything, it's that people who experience challenge and injustice should be and can be the ones to confront it and make change. So the space being created here today is one in which you can take back to your individual schools, and in partnership with your administrative teams, we will help you define the changes you want to make as parents and work with you to develop the leadership you need to make those changes. So as I began learning more with this regional turnaround strategy group. We'll call them RTSG for short. It's a group comprised of dedicated educational professionals. And as we began to learn about how schools and their systems work, in my now newly appointed role as board chair, and in partnership with my school's leadership team, we took my learnings and we began making improvements within our school. But we first had to acknowledge that in order for us to be successful, it was important to listen to and partner with our school community. And that was something that had never been done in an authentic way before. And usually it was because, it's scary for schools to relinquish a measure of control. But during my 6-year term, my team ensured that we included parent and community voice to help us shape the direction of the school. And we really, truly saw the benefits. So my experiences of working with the board, visiting schools, learning about school business, and supporting community leadership, it really fueled my decision to later form a program to support parent leadership development within all schools. Because wherever there are children, there needs to be a parent leadership group like this one. So when my term came to an end, I decided my mission going forward would be to provide resources and supports to families and community members such as yourselves, who want to really engage in their children's education, who want to know how to navigate school systems and have a role in making change, the right change for their students. So my work focuses on leadership initiatives, parent leadership initiatives that practice deep and sustained engagement with parents over time, with the goal of developing parent leaders. And so we support families by listening to the parent voice, supporting it, creating space for your leadership, and offering development training. As you, the parent, determine paths you want to take to get more involved in your school, and as you identify how you want to support students in a meaningful way, while partnering with other educational stakeholders like your administrative team or your district leaders. So I am really so truly grateful to be with all of you change makers on this call this morning. And if you look at this center picture, my main reasons for doing this work is for those beautiful young ladies in the middle, because they, along with your children, are the ones who will inherit our communities. So let's leave them something to be proud of. So I've said enough for now. I'm going to turn it back over to my parent facilitator, Miss Triasia Givens, who will continue with the introductions.
Okay, thank you, Miss Carol. Every time I see that, I get so encouraged and also want to cry sometimes. So we will just be doing small introductions. So I will start with myself. Again, my name is Asia Givens, Triasia Givens. I am the parent facilitator for STC. I like to say, traditionally, as my traditional like work, I am a mental health practitioner. But I also, when I'm at home, I am mom. That's it. They don't care what I am. I'm a parent advocate outside of it, but I am mom at home. And I feel like that's my most important role. The reason what attracted me to STC was that it was just about number one about the children, and also just the collaboration of parent voices. It wasn't a hidden agenda. It wasn't anything that came from what STC wanted and to tell the parents to do and go do it. It was strictly about what the parents needed and to continue to build that to empower them to do what they need and to know that they have every resource within themselves to make the changes and that everyone is a change agent uniquely. So I that's what attracted me to STC. I know we have like administrators here, and so if you don't mind, we do have Principal Guzman couldn't come, but she is a great collaborative with collaborator with SCC. So we do have Liliana Rodriguez here, and I would love for her to speak of who she is, her role, and why she allowed us to present today to you guys. So I'll give it to
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Liliana Rodriguez. I'm the TOSA Dual Language Coordinator for Sheridan. My position actually came after CDD and the need to connect with families and inform what the change the district went going through. So being part of this role, I noticed how much this need to be done to make sure our families understand how change is done in the district, how their voice is important, and how can they advocate for the kids. So I was approached by these wonderful ladies, and she they present to us, to Senora Guzman and myself, about the project, the leadership program they offer to the parents. I find that that's something we really need, and I hope not only us, other buildings can adopt this, because we really need to empower our parents. We really need to empower you, because the power is in you. Because we don't access is your child's knowing our building. So it's you can understand how powerful you are, and also give the tools, the necessary tools to actually do that step and advocate for your kids, because sometimes that tool is not facilitated to us. And this is what this program is all about. And really happy this is happening. And thank you. Thank you for doing this. In the name of our community. Thank you.
And thank you. We did have invite the principal at Pillsbury, Miss Jessica, and also Samantha, the social worker. We're hoping that they join us again. We do have a second presentation at 2 p.m. Today. So they are also willing to have parents part of the program. And as we stated, you don't need to be in these schools necessarily to learn to be part of the program. This is about parents in their community and learning. So just if you would like to be part of the program and learn and do these workshops, it's absolutely fine. It doesn't have to be from the school. So I want to make that clear. So if you would like, for our participant today, if you would like to introduce yourself, and in the chat you can just put just introduce yourself, the what role you share, parent, community leader, student, and tell us who you are, what brings you here to the table today, and yeah, and what have been the roses and thorns in your experience with public education? Um, so if you can go ahead and put that in the chat and we can read that, that would be great. And while we're waiting, I know what I can say. Again, as I stated, I'm Asia. I'm a parent. what brings me here today is to empower and encourage parents' voices to understand that they are uniquely leaders of the community. Um, and their voices absolutely matter. Some roses and thorns in my experience with public education. Some roses is that I found a great team for my son who was diagnosed with autism and anxiety and pervasive ADHD and ADD. So you know, it he needed a really needed use special education for his services through public education, and I found a really great team to help him just learn how to navigate at school, um, and who really had the resources to help him um, as needed. Some thorns may have been um, is that he starts to realize as a black boy in the community, also, you know, part Latino, he is that it's a difference seeing being, you know, growing up, and so he is still struggling with I don't want to be seen as this. I just want to be seen as a person. And sometimes in public education or just in general, growing up with the student of color, especially with him being multicultural, um, trying to figure out where you stand and how you stand in society. Um, is something that he's still trying to understand and not being the label that he's diagnosed with, but making sure that he is seen as a person. So those are my good and bad experiences or roses and thorns in public education. Um, Jennifer, were you able to put in a comment in the thing yet? Miss Tyranny, did you want to share any of your roses and thorns?
Well, I just wanted to ask really quick, are you able to see the chat or is Miss Rodriguez handling that?
Yes, I'm able to see the chat.
Okay, okay. Um, well, my roses, I guess, is that all of my children, despite some of the challenges that they each individually had to face, um, all actually had, you know, a good experience for the most part in public education. My thorns were that each one of them had to go through something to make it through. So, like I said, one was diagnosed with ADD, and that was a huge issue because at the time, which is something that they're talking about with CDD, is they made us go to our neighborhood school. Well, that particular school had what you called an open environment. So you can imagine how difficult that is for a child with attention deficit disorder to be focused. And yet they penalized him for turning around every time, someone walked down the hallway or when another child said something in another classroom. But that was the environment that he had to be placed in at that time. And so that was a huge thorn for me. So ended up taking him out of there and finding a school that was able to meet his needs, that had more structure, and he flourished there. The same with a couple of my other children. One is an introvert, and her experiences within education was, they wanted her to be more outgoing, and they were trying to push her to do all these other things, and that really caused her to kind of withdraw even more within herself. And so I ended up having to move her out of that environment into an environment where she could flourish. And that those were some of the the thorns that I had, is identifying the issues that my children were having and putting them, and that's the power of that parent voice and standing up for, and being advocates for your children, finding the right spot for them in education so that they can flourish. And by the time one of my children left junior high, she was 3 years ahead of her high school counterparts when she got into high school. So I did have some roses, but I did have some thorns, and so that's why this is so important to us today. So what we can do is we can move on to our next slide, and if you would take over and go over our norms for how we hold our work.
Sorry about that. So our norms to hold our work. We do our work in the service of students. Oh, we do got
Jennifer.
Jennifer. So before we do our norms, I'm going to just read it really quick. And Ms. Jennifer says, I am a parent of the community with 5 multicultural children. I am here to become a better advocate for them. I have a child who has ASD and another with anxiety and ADHD. Me and my husband have been advocates for our children early on, and we have been actively looking out for our children. We have been there for the roses and the thorns, but have been able to handle it immediately. And that's awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Jennifer, for sharing that.
Yes.
Um, so we're gonna so thank you again. We're gonna do finish with the norms here. Um, we do our work in the service of students in our region and in the pursuit of educational justice. We are fully present and prepared to contribute when we are together as a learning community. We all take responsibility for the effectiveness of the group, and we take an approach that favors exploration over advocacy. We encourage each other to ask difficult questions, to support each other to think more about an issue, and we offer data or evidence when we can. We commit to exploring, acknowledging, and addressing issues of identity, including race, class, privilege, gender, sexual orientation, and religious affiliation. And we take time to celebrate the joy and the privilege of working together to do something important. I think that's one of the
Thanks.
most important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I'll just jump in real quick. We had these norms read today because each meeting that we have with parents and school members really follows this set of norms. Each meeting is designed to bring out the best ideas from every participant. And so we have these ground rules set, which really help us to do this efficiently. And the aim of the norms is to create a safe and respectful space in which everyone can work together productively. So we have these set of statements, and these statements really set the tone for how we do our work together. So we want to continue to build on that work. And I am going to discuss now the battlefield that we find ourselves in as parents. So thank you so much, Triasia, for going over those previous slides with us.
Yes.
Well, I chose this word, battlefield, not because parents are in a literal fight with teachers, schools, or district personnel, but because we are in a war. And it's a war involving ideas, conflicts, structures, different ways of thinking, cultures, priorities, agendas, pedagogies. The list can go on. And as parents, we're really being pulled from all sides. We have the students, the teachers, the family. We have work. We have schools, districts, politicians. Oh my. But as I bring up this next slide, it's some examples of some of the direct and indirect battles that you and your children have to navigate through. So as you really review these images, I would like for you to use the chat feature again and tell us which one really resonates with you. So I'll pull up the slide, and then I'll give you a couple minutes just to review the photos. Now, don't forget to, you can put your thoughts into the chat and let us know which of these pictures really resonates with you and why. So if you look at yes, how about chaos? We were really living in some chaotic times. Social injustices and social unrest. We're still dealing
Mrs.
with that.
In the chat, Mrs. Rodriguez said all of them resonates with her.
Yes, yes. Tell us why. We'd appreciate that.
When I see all those visuals, one way or other, we have been influenced and affected by all of them. So it's so difficult for me to separate them. And
Yeah, yeah.
yes,
That
it
is,
hasn't been easy lately.
yeah. We see, teachers, they're exhausted, right? They had a lot to do. Not only did they have to teach our children, but they had to teach their own children while at home. There's a lot to navigate through. We also see new ways of teaching. Distance learning was a big thing last year. What is it? What is the value of standardized testing? So many are asking that question. Parents doing it all. I feel like that one all the time. Got a kid on one hip, one on in your arms. You're running to be somewhere on time. Yes. A lot of decision makers we see on the screen today: governors, mayors, MDE, board of directors for MPS, teachers. That also equates to a lot of decisions that are possibly being made without us as parents.
Yes.
So,
Jennifer says here, what resonates with her is the woman with the items falling off of the backpack. There are so many things to do and not enough time or energy to do it. Yes.
absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, um, ask yourself this: how were you supported to navigate through all of this? And then, better yet, how were your children supported in navigating through all of this? Because they experienced all of this right with us. So I'm going to ask you to participate one more time on this screen. And I'm just going to read off some questions, and you just kind of think about it, your own personal experiences. But from 1 to 5, just kind of think to yourself, as I'm asking these questions, what your answer would be. So it's going to be, the questions are going to be surrounded about how well you know the people and the entities which make decisions for you and your children. So, like the governor and the mayor, what are their agendas concerning education? What do you think? How much do you know about what their agendas are? How much do you know about how the Minnesota Department of Education is structured and how their decisions impact schools? How much do you know about that? MDE's purpose for 2021 was to ensure that every student in the state of Minnesota receives an equitable education and has equal access to learning and instruction. Did that happen? Do we know?
No.
And if it didn't, who's holding them accountable? Another question is, who knows the Minneapolis Public School board members and how and our current district leaders? Do you know them? Are you familiar with them? Have you heard from them? Do they know you? What processes does it take to make changes at the state legislative level? Do you know that? What do we have to do to get something changed, to push back, to change our narrative? Did you know that during the pandemic, working high school students fought for the ability to receive unemployment, and they won? They went to the legislative and did that. And are you familiar with the positive and negative impacts standardized testing has on your children. And then the final question is, closer to home, are you familiar with your school's mission and vision and how your school's agenda items support what's best for your children? So these are all some examples of topics that could be open for discussion in your parent leadership groups. But a larger discussion, which we won't get into too much today, but it's getting familiar with education in Minnesota. And I'll briefly touch on some of the key points next. So, brief overview about education in Minnesota is that we have 850,000 students, 60,000 teachers, and about 60 non-licensed staff, 336 traditional school districts, 2,080 public schools, including 169 public charter schools, 371 non-public schools, 20,000 students are being homeschooled at this time. And this one caught my attention. 98% of our teachers are Caucasian, and 70% of those are female. And that last fact is important, especially as cultural relevance in our teachers really becomes a louder part of the conversation. At the end of 2019, 5 months before a global pandemic where schools literally shut down for a time, an executive brief was submitted about the state of education in Minnesota. And the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, what they did is they examined Minnesota's persistent education achievement gap. And they listed here just some highlights from this very lengthy report. So I'll just read over them really quick. They said that Minnesota has some of the largest gaps in the nation on outcome measures by race and socioeconomic status. Our educational disparities are not confined to race. Low-income white students significantly trail higher income white students across Minnesota. Disparities span all parts of the state and all types of schools, whether it's district or charter. The achievement gaps are evidently across a variety of measures, including standardized test scores, graduation rates, and college readiness indicators. This one caught my attention. That racial and income gaps in standardized test scores and college readiness have increased over time, while the gaps in graduation rates have decreased. So how is that possible? Well, it's because Minnesota is graduating an increasing proportion of students who are unprepared for college. It is really, truly a sad state of affairs, and our babies need your help. Here's another gaps at a glance. Again, Minnesota has failed to close achievement gaps for decades, but there is hope that the state can finally break this trend and provide an education that works for all Minnesota students. This report did highlight other places in the nation that have improved outcomes for children of color and low-income students. And as parents, though, we have to prepare ourselves now. We have to be ready to either support the decisions that come back to us or push back on them. We do this by arming ourselves with knowledge. So I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a moment. So please, everyone, indulge me. This last slide pertaining to how America is failing millions of high achieving students from lower income families really just touched my heart. And so I wanted to share it. These findings come from 3 federal databases. Oh, excuse me so much. These findings come from 3 federal databases that during the past 20 years have tracked students in elementary and high school, college, and graduate school. And sadly, as you can see here, from the time our little ones enter grade school through post-secondary education, these students lose more educational ground and excel less frequently than their higher income peers. Now, mind you, there are millions of students who are overcoming challenging socioeconomic circumstances to excel academically. They defy the stereotype that poverty precludes high academic performance and that lower income and low academic achievements are inextricably linked. They demonstrate that economically disadvantaged children can learn at the highest levels and provide hope to other lower income students seeking to follow the same path. Yet, instead of being recognized for their excellence and encouraged to strengthen their achievement, our high achieving lower income students enter what we call the achievement trap. And that's where educators, policymakers, and the public assume that because they're doing well, that they can fend for themselves, when the facts really show otherwise. The experiences of our students during elementary school and high school is cause for alarm. There are far fewer lower income students achieving at the highest levels than there should be. They disproportionately fall out of the high achieving group during elementary and high school, and they rarely rise into the ranks of high achievers during those periods. And perhaps most disturbingly, far too few ever graduate from college or go on to graduate school. So, parents, unless something is done, many of our brightest lower income students will meet this same educational fate, robbing them of opportunity. This pattern of declining educational attainment mirrors the experiences of underachieving students from lower income families. They start grade school behind their peers. They fall back even further during high school, and they complete college and graduate school at lower rates than those from higher income families. So the time is now, targeting public policies, private resources, and academic research to help your students achieve excellence and rise as high educationally as their individual talents can take them. So as we strive to close the achievement gaps between racial and economic groups, we will not succeed if our highest performing students from lower income families continue to slip through the cracks. Your input, parents, can assist in reversing the downward trajectory of their educational achievement. And you'll not only improve the lives of lower income high achievers, but you'll also strengthen our schools and communities by unleashing the potential of young people who could be making such great contributions. So, okay, I'm done now. I'm back. Reel me in. I'm going to turn it now back over to Ms. Triasia to discuss why your voices matter.
So, thank you so much. That it's so informative. That part of the presentation. Um, Again, I want to thank you guys so much for just sticking with us. And I know this is a lot of information, but we are getting close to the end. But now you're here to understand why your voice and why you matter and why we want you to be a part of the program. So, why is incorporating authentic parent leadership important? Parents must organize to become more effective advocates for our children. Parents armed with quality information about the business of school creates empowered parents who can successfully navigate and advocate for something you and your students need. Parents can change and reclaim your narrative story for your children. Parents report the past efforts to engage them in around standards, assessments, and other reform initiatives have been largely inauthentic and top down. And what STC is bottom up. To make change, you need to know about the laws that govern our children or govern the process that makes decisions for our children. And one practice we should do away with is over relying on schools to solve our problems. The community knows best and what is they need, and it's time for that those in positions of power to listen to you and collaborate with you. Leadership has missed opportunities to hear new ideas and solutions, and often resulting in poor implementations of policies and programs, as we've seen so many times, and a lack of buy in or even public backlash around reform initiatives. Parents aren't engaged properly. They're usually checked off the box like we did community engagement and parent engagement, and we're good to go. And that's not a collaboration. Um, like we said, after hearing so many of these shocking stats that Mrs. Tierney was talking about for Minnesota, we can clearly see why incorporating authentic parent leadership is important. And I'd like for you to take a moment to read over this and just think about what I've read over, and to share one of the items on either side that resonates with you, and tell us why. Do any of these resonate with you and why it's important? And you can put it in the chat if you would like.
And while they're doing that, Miss Givens, if you don't mind, I'd like to. Can I do one?
Yes,
Yes.
that's absolutely fine. You can do
um,
one. Go
the
ahead.
one they all resonate with me, but one that I really appreciate is that bullet number 2 on the right column that says that one practice we should do away with is over relying on schools to solve all of our problems. I choose this one because, contrary to our beliefs as parents, schools are not positioned to fill every hole in the education net, right? So, in order to address the widening equity gap, we really need to look at education and equity as a collective effort. And teachers alone just can't solve this problem. So we need excellent principals, like the ones that we had on the call today, to support those teachers. We need to do more to involve parent and community members in decisions that impact them, like we're doing today, right? We need bureaucrats, politicians, to create an environment in which principals and teachers can really thrive, and they also need to mobilize the resources to support school systems. So we need to active parent leaders, and that's what we're talking about today, to hold these parties accountable and committed to our students. So every one of us has a role that we need to play. So that's why I like that one.
And Mrs. Jennifer put in the chat that the bullet point that resonated with her was parents. The third one on the left side, parents can change and reclaim your narrative and story for your children.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes,
love that.
you can. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And every uncomfortable conversation that we could ever have really represents a possibility for us to lead and an opportunity to better serve our students and the community. And that's what we're here to do, to assist parents in their growth. As parent groups, empower you through learning so that you can grow, so that you can lead, so that you can execute your agenda.
Mm-hmm. And like Ms. Tierney said, our purpose today isn't to set your agenda for you, but to identify why you, as parents, guardians, community members, teachers, students, can get involved now, and to share why parent organization or organizing for collective action is important. Um, every uncomfortable conversation represents a possibility for us to lead, and an opportunity to better serve your students and the community.
Yeah.
We are here to assist in your growth as a parent group and empowering you through learning so that you can grow and lead and execute your agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have the other reasons why parent voices is important. is when schools can give parents a voice and say on school matters and involvement in decision making on issues that affect them. It enables the schools to meet the needs of the communities and they serve more effectively. For example, the partnerships, most school policies have a direct impact on families, and so those families' views should be taken into account and to ensure that it's the maximum effectiveness of those policies. Another example is the relationship and opportunities for involvement. For this to happen, it is vital that the school boards and the school leaders create an open and welcome culture, which was greatly extended through the CDD, or said that it will be extended through the CDD. So providing multiple opportunities for families to share their voices. And it's important, especially if you have children in the MPS community, that if the CDD states that you have the tools to know to say and collaborate with the schools to understand, and the school leaderships to say, this is what's stated in the policy, this is what's stated as the CDD design, and you want to ensure that it is creating an open and welcome environment and culture for your children and your families and your community. A last one example is power to speak and be heard. By reaching out to all parents and making sure they know how important they are and that their voices matter and how they can best support their child is one of the most important tasks for a school. And so learning, did somebody say something?
Nope, you're
So
good.
okay, so the most important reason for parent voice and research, and I have my little one up again now. So if you hear him in the background, I apologize. He is getting over, he's actually got pneumonia. He's just getting up. um, so um, The research around family and parent engagement confirms that we will suspect to be true, and which is students with parents who are honored and engaged with their schools have students who earn better grades, score higher on tests, pass their classes, attend school regularly. They have better social skills. They show improved behavior. They have positive attitudes towards school, probably towards you because you're engaged. Um, sometimes, and complete homework and graduate and continue their education. So, barriers and challenges. Um, so, what keeps so many parents, this is a big elephant in the room. So, what keeps so many parents from participating in their child's school? So, let's talk about it for a moment. In the chat, you can let me know what are some things and barriers and challenges you think that creates, like that keeps you from, or other parents or community members from, um, participating in their child's school. And I know we're getting towards the end of time. Um, so some of the barriers and difficulties we can put in here is, parents lack of comfort within the school. Some parents feel intimidated and unwelcome at school. Many parents have negative and school experiences themselves. Many of are unfamiliar with the American culture, that they do not want to get involved or feel unsure about the value of their contributions. Language barriers, too busy, not worth it, it won't help. Afraid to say no. Um, there is no to say teachers, administrators, and to the district leaders. Many parents don't understand that they can say no to the parents, they just allow them. Overload of information, which is big, especially with the CDD, as we know. and long held beliefs that parents who do not participate don't care, which is not true.
Mhm. So as we move on, I just want to, and thank you for that presentation, Triasia. I really want to encourage you to make yourselves as parents comfortable at your child's school. As parents, you hold the power. None of that other stuff that were listed as barriers and challenges matters. And some of you may already be currently participating in some form of traditional parent engagement at your school, and that is awesome. So keep that up. But now we're going to talk about traditional versus this new parent role. So I want you to consider this for a second. So we're going to start on the left side. PTAs were founded in 1897 as the National Congress of Mothers by, what's her name? Alice McLean Burney. I hope I didn't butcher her name, and Phoebe Apperson Hearst. And they were, PTAs were set up to be a powerful voice for all children, a relevant resource for families and communities, and a strong advocate for public education. So ask yourself, is that what you see today happening in the PTA? And then these other examples on the left are structures that were put in place by the schools in order to engage their parents. Like Triasia said earlier, checking those boxes. And while parental involvement in these ways has had a proven and positive effect on children's success, these roles all have limited influence. So what we're inviting you into today is a new space for more authentic leadership. Parent organizing and leadership, it encompasses involvement and engagement. So you won't lose that. But it also includes gaining the knowledge and skills, representing parent voice, shaping the direction of your schools, building effective partnerships and sharing responsibility, expertise, and leadership. It involves collaboration and again, leadership. So by giving parents a voice, a say on school matters, and involvement in decision making on issues that affect them, schools are enabled to set the needs of the communities that they serve more effectively. Most school policies, as was brought out earlier, have a direct input on families. And so those families' views should be taken into account to ensure their effectiveness. And for this to happen, it's really vital that governors, districts, and school leaders create an open and welcoming culture, providing multiple opportunities for families to participate. And I know we mentioned it before, but it is particularly important to reach out to parents who are disengaged for one reason or another. So within this new role for parents, we create groups of cohorts like this one that provides content which supports and enhances your educational leadership. We have cohort learnings or peer-to-peer knowledge transfers where we bring schools together to discuss what's working well or not working so that we can all get better together. We share opportunities to see practice in action through school visits and other immersive learning experiences. And some opportunities for leadership and advocacy include things like community-driven school change. So instead of you waiting for them, information from the top down on what they think should be done for your children, you identify from the ground up what you know your students need and what will contribute to their success. There's also the opportunity for legislative changes, as I talked about before, and we'll discuss that in future meetings. There's just so many things that we as parents and educators take for granted when it comes to schooling. But here's a little teaser. School doesn't have to be the way that we always experienced it. So we'll talk about that. And then, of course, there's community leadership, town halls, op-eds, blogs. So now you may be wondering really quick, well, how do you get involved in this leadership, this authentic leadership? Well, at STC, we use this dual capacity framework to hold our work. And this comes out of the work of Dr. Karen Mapp. Her picture is down there in the corner. And she is a professor at the Harvard Graduate School. So notice that there are two paths. There's an educator path and a family path. But for today's purposes, I just want you to briefly focus on the family path. But for this to work, I must say, educators will need a change in mindsets about what parents can contribute and create pathways for those contributions. And likewise, as parents, we need to build our confidence and capacity to shape and influence the schools and systems that serve our children. And so right now, you have a wonderful group of educators that you were introduced to earlier that are at your schools who think that this is a pathway to authentic parent leadership and parent voice. And they want to support you because they believe that you can be the change they seek and they need and welcome your help. But it's not solely on you parents. It takes a village. My team, along with your school leaders, stand behind the reality of parents being respectfully, intentionally, and proactively included in the conversations about what is helpful for their child. And all we need is a little of your time and your effort. And that's why our approach to this work of parent engagement and leadership is so different. So, what can you expect from STC? We train our parents and community members on educational content, which support and enhances your educational leadership. We provide learnings from persons like yourself, peers at other schools, and subject matter experts. We give you opportunities to see practice in action. We'll go on school visits. We'll have local and national speakers. We may even go visit them. And we support parent leadership and advocacy for better student involvement. And I learned earlier on that, organizing learning events such as this one really helps parents just to take a moment to step back from all the demands of their job and their home life to focus for a moment on the process of and importance of school improvement. Improvements which can happen with your help and your dedication. So we need all of our parents, especially now as we push for education systems to do things with families instead of without them. So with STC, parents set the agenda on topics for discussion. Parents identify what they need to learn more about so that when you do address educational leaders, you can speak from a place of knowledge and understanding. As the students have so beautifully coined, I don't know if you've heard this phrase, but no more decisions for us without us. So as we look at these next pictures, this is a quote from Jane D. Hull, and I love this quote. Jane D. Hull is an educator, governor of Arizona. It says, "At the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is the positive involvement of parents." So I just want you to take a moment to reflect on that statement and the information that you've heard thus far. Okay, thank you. So as we wrap up our discussion, I have just one more slide for your review. If you can go back again to the chat, and we're so appreciative of your participation, answer this question. What word in this picture resonates with you the most, and tell us why? Or if you like, you can answer, what is your hope for your parent leadership group? And while we're doing that, Ms. Treasia, do you have a word that jumps out to you? Or Ms. Rodriguez?
Ms. Rodriguez put in the chat, children stands out for her. One that stands out for me is included.
Awesome. I know that the word for me. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Jennifer said voices stands out for her.
Awesome. Yes. I think the word that kind of jumps out for me is opportunity. because when we authentically engage admin, staff, teachers, students, our lenses of understanding and our desire to help others really grows. And so every uncomfortable conversation that we have represents a possibility for us to lead and an opportunity to better serve the students in our community. So thank you all for sharing. Those were very powerful. So what's next? What is next? So our next meeting is going to be on Start from the Beginning, learning about schooling. And again, I'm a sucker for inspirational quotes. C.S. Lewis once said that you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. And so that's what we're going to be doing. And some of the points that we're going to discuss is, how did we arrive at our system of education, the one that we're experiencing today? What is our educational paradigm? How does that paradigm impact my students' educational experience? And then we'll determine together agenda items and what additional, if any, learnings on that subject is needed. So we ask you to join us. I ask everyone here today to commit to joining the journey of advocating, standing up for, and taking back our schools for our students. So I ask you to be an active participant of this parent leadership group. Ask another parent to join. Talk with parents or other loved ones about this meeting and invite them to the next one. Or you can meet individually with myself or Triasia to debrief about this meeting and find out what else you can do. And so as a final request, I ask you to unmute yourself and just share one word that describes how you're feeling right now at this moment, and maybe a commitment that you're willing to make and be and want to share with the group.
For me, I'm just feeling more empowered to advocate for my children and other children.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know that we're short on time, so I want to thank you all for your time, definitely for sharing your thoughts. We're going to try to have one more meeting this month if we can, for those who are interested in continuing. And as school wraps up, and some schools have already wrapped up, decisions will shortly be starting and under review for next year. So you need and want to be a part of those discussions, because you can and you will make a difference. So if you have any questions, please feel free. We don't propose to have all the answers, but we do guarantee that we will go back and find the answer for you if we don't have it. So if you have any additional questions, please put them in the chat. And again, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you. And thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mrs. Guzman, for having us.
And here's our contact